We got an engine, it's coming in hot from Team Boddie. This engine had a couple holes go out at the racetrack. As everybody knows, their schedule is a little bit hectic, so we're going to do our best to turn around for them here in 24 hours. Doesn't look like anything too major. Got a couple sleeves here. You can tell, we'll get this strap out of the way. So you can tell here you got some Black Death going on in the sleeve. So this sleeve will come out, this sleeve will come out. Slide the crank out, we'll inspect it. Intake manifold, of course, will come off, but this kind of shows here part of the benefits of the 4.9. You're able to remove the cylinder heads without removing the intake manifold. The guys would have done this at the track just to kind of inspect everything and start tearing it down to make our job easier. But from here, we'll get it next door, get it tore down, see what else we need to replace, check all the rods, pistons, wrist pins, valves, etc., and start turning this thing around and get it back to the racetrack. Let's get started.
So along the way, I'm going to explain some of the steps that we do during the rebuild process. Remember, the clock's ticking, and we got to do this with haste, but engine building is a process overall, so we got to make sure we're dotting our T's and crossing our I's. One of the key things you want to do before you disassemble the whole timing gear front half of the engine is you want to make sure you understand where the timing is set for the cam sync and the crank trigger, so you want to make sure you can put the engine back exactly where it was. Another step we're going to do is check the cam timing to see where our center lines are. The best way to do that would be to pull the piston rings off the piston, slide it back in, and then put a lifter in. You'll see Daryl installing one piston, then the number 1 cylinder, and 1 lifter. And we're going to use our tool, actually, that Wild Motorsports made. We'll use that to get the piston right at top dead center. We're going to look at our gauge, see where it's at its highest point, and then we'll mark the cam, see exactly where it is. Again, we want to put the cam, everything back in the exact same spot. It's time to get into an actual repair of the block. We're going to rip the 2 bad sleeves out of it, slide the 2 new ones in. We're going to get in our cylinder hone, get everything trued up. We'll make it to where all the sleeves are the same. So now we'll get into the cylinder heads while the block is in the hone. Cam is going to rip apart the heads with a magnifying glass, sort of to where we can check the springs, the lash caps, the retainers, see what wear, any kind of indication of anything that's going wrong. We're going to pull everything apart surgically, inspect it all, check spring pressures, check the valve seats. In this case, we did run it back across the epoch to touch up the seats on the cylinder head. We're going to be looking through all the push rod ports, making sure that there's no contact, anything there that's going off. Checking the hoop rings, which would indicate, any kind of sealing issue with the head gasket. Not typical on a 4.9, we still inspect for it anyway. And then yeah, we'll go through, make sure all the valves seal up correctly, our installed height is correct, and we're going to start getting these things washed up and ready to go back in on the assembly bench. After the cylinder heads have been machined and inspected and ready to go, one of the characteristics of the 4.9 is having hoop ring surfaces on every aspect. All of our repair stuff is going to leave with new rubber on the block and the cylinder heads. So we'll go through, get all that inspected. One last look, check all the guide holes. It's time for assembly. All right, it's time to start reassembly. So Daryl's going to come through, check all of our rings, make sure that our end gaps are correct, that our tension, our overlap on our oil rings are going to be correct. Check all of the oil galleries, make sure everything is clean and there's nothing in the oil passageways that would be a problem down the road. Really nothing should be in there at all. Now we're going to put all of our main bearings in, all of our main studs. We'll slide the main cap on, all of the registers without the crankshaft in first. That way we can check for our main bearing clearance. Measure the bearing installed with the block torqued up, and then you'll see Daryl come over to the crankshaft, check the journal on it, and that's going to give you the main bearing clearance. We're going to make sure that everything has the proper clearance before we put it back together. Putting everything in the engine without checking that is really bad practice. Once we have the crankshaft in, everything on the main tunnel is good. We're going to come through, check our crank in play. You'll see the gauge hanging off the back of the block. Then it's time to get the camshaft in. We'll come through, check all our camshaft journals and bearings, make sure they're all straight. Make sure we put all of our assembly lube across all the journals and slowly slide the good old thumbstick in. Make sure everything's good to go and get the camshaft heart of the engine in there. 4.9 is going to run a 70 mil camshaft, so it is a little bit bigger than what you're probably used to seeing in a 4.8. Journals and everything are quite large. Once the camshaft's installed, it's time to get all of our timing gear back on. So Daryl's going to get all of our idler gear and all of our front end components back to where we set them earlier. We'll put everything on for now, and then we're gonna get all of our pistons installed so we can come back and then check the cam timing and reset everything that we checked before we tore the engine down. This is where you're gonna have to be super crucial on installing the pistons. Make sure you don't mar up the cylinders or the connecting rod pin on the crankshaft. This is really the heart of engine building right here, putting the pistons and rods back in the engine. Get everything in, check top dead center, see where your camshaft lift is, and from there it's get everything back smooth sailing and assembled. We always want to check the rod bolt stretch. There's always a torque value the manufacturer will recommend, but we'll always check the actual stretch of the bolt as well as use the torque wrench. The stretch is going to tell you exactly what that bolt is doing. So in the back room, again, we're on a time crunch. Cam went ahead and got our cylinder heads together for us to where we can, once Daryl had the short block complete, we could get the heads together. So we've got everything mic'd up, installed height's good, heads slid on. We've tightened up all the head studs to the correct values. The oil pan is coming back on the engine. Big part of rebuilding a hurt engine. Make sure the oil pan, all your oil lines and oil pump are clean. Anytime you get any kind of debris or anything like that in there, it's just going to circle back through your engine and you're going to be back at the doctor's office again. So we've cleaned everything out, got everything back together. Intake manifolds on, we're ready to roll. It's time to head this thing out to the customer. All right, guys, that wraps up Boddie's engine rebuild. Everything went pretty much according to plan. We got it done right at 24 hours. Popped the sleeves in, got new pistons, rods, rings, wrist pins, everything like that. Everything measured out good. Luckily, a lot of the parts were salvageable. And when I say luckily, I mean just in the industry, it's hard to get everything. We're fortunate enough where we can pump out the stuff that we make quickly, but we're really happy that one went smoothly. So right now it's we're loading it up, getting it to the customer. He's going to make his race, and we're going to hop in the next room. We've got another one that just showed up. So it never ends. Let's get on, keep on trucking.